everyone. Welcome to the latest installment of MSP Business School. As always, I'm Brian Doyle.
I'm Tim McNeil.
And I'm Rob Rogers.
And Rob Rogers, as I always like to say, is damn glad to meet all of you, right?
That's right.
So anyway, guys, we're heading into the fall season here, starting to see a little bit of change up here in the Northeast. Finally seeing a little dry weather the last couple of days. Yeah. Well, at least today, which is weather. Nice.
I know.
But what are some of your objectives now? This is selling season, and that's the real reason I brought it up. I hope everybody out there listening is getting their game face on, because we got 3 months to go out and sell.
Yeah, these are the big ones too.
Yeah, before you lose interest to the holidays. So
yep.
If you're starting to, if you're still if you're still savoring the summer, let it go. It's time to get to work, right?
Yeah. Yep. It's definitely that time of year between now and Thanksgiving, and then a couple weeks after Thanksgiving, and then it just kind of goes away till January.
And then it's time for strategic planning, right? But
rinse and repeat.
So anyway, we're not going to take a lot of time here because we've got a guest that we want to introduce to you. Many of you may know him already, but I want to formally introduce Bobby Jacobs, Head of Growth from Thread. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bob.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I consider you guys 3 heavy hitters in the space. Love
don't feed Rob's ego, man.
Yeah.
I'll let you figure out which 2 those are. No, but it's great to be on here. Great to be hanging out. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and guys, we've talked about it before, but Bob's one of the Pitch It cohort competitors as well. So we've gotten to know him, his company a little bit more throughout this process. And, I don't know what your take on it, but it's been really fun to get to know some of the new and emerging vendors and, see some people we don't see regularly out on the trade show circuit.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a lot of value to Pitch It. I'm sure, I've heard you guys talk about it on previous episodes of like meeting the different advisors and connections. But yeah, knowing other early stage companies and getting to do stuff like this, getting to do stuff at conferences, integrations, like ultimately it helps the MSP, right? Because it's earlier stage companies integrating and doing more faster. Yeah. Pretty cool.
Yeah. And that's the real key, faster, right? It's fun to be on this side of the fence and when you're in the growth phase, because you can make decisions and execute on them quickly. It's tougher for some of those guys that have already been acquired to make those changes. And, hopefully we can show that being nimble is one of all of our strengths. So I agree with you totally. But I'd love to kick things off by first learning a little bit more about yourself, your background, and how you ended up in the crazy world MSP.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Brian. I love the MSP space. I have actually brought a lot of my friends into the MSP space. When I was early at Liongard, we were growing quickly. And
are they still your friends?
They are. I've actually got to bring a few of them on at Thread as well. So it's been pretty cool. But yeah, for myself, I have an undergrad in entrepreneurship, which is really cool. Like, it's a lot of fun, but it also means you kind of have no real skills coming out of college, right? It's like, go start a company, except you're 21 and you probably shouldn't do that because that's a terrible idea. And so I actually got into ministry right out of college. But pretty quickly after that, I was looking for my next thing, and a mentor of mine knew a guy who owned a company that resold refurbished IT hardware. I'm from Houston, and so Compaq, HP, there's a lot of stuff going on there. And so this company had been reselling Compaq stuff for like 30 years. Basically, someone would return something, it would get sent straight to their warehouse, they would resell it, make a ton of money. By the time I got there, the company had completely fallen apart. The whole sales team had left. There was a warehouse worth of like $1 million of written off, like old servers and hard drives and stuff nobody wanted. And so I had this spreadsheet. It was like my first real job. I had a spreadsheet full of all these part numbers, and I created an AIM account my first day at work. And it was like, all right, go start messaging all these IT brokers on AIM and selling this like, really crappy hardware. And so that was technically my entrance into the MSP space. Like, typically I was selling to brokers who were reselling this refurbished stuff to MSPs, but I did learn how to like put together a server by hand and do some really cool stuff there. I ended up going to a startup accelerator after that. I was only at that company for like 6 or 9 months, and there was an accelerator starting in Houston. And Liongard was actually one of the first companies that there was a member there. So they were technically a customer of mine. I was selling them a membership and connecting them with like mentors and some investors and the CFO of the company. They met there, a lot of early employees. And after knowing them for a few years, I was ready to get back into like a real startup, wanted to do something with software.
Yeah.
They probably were working with like 40 MSPs at the time. So we're just starting to take off. And yeah, I got to jump over. I was first 10 employees and got to be there for 4 years. Loved Joe and Vin and the team. And man, I just fell in love with MSPs. Like getting to go to conferences and sitting at the bar next to CEOs of all these really cool companies is like a young guy who had studied entrepreneurship. It was perfect, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, those are good times.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our marketplace has such a mix of different people that have fallen into the ownership position of an MSP, some strategically, some by need. And it's great to hear their stories, especially when you're sitting at a conference at the bar, and, how did you get there and what are your lessons learned? And one thing I've definitely felt, and Rob and Tim, you guys probably feel this way too, there's probably no community that's more willing to share failure than the MSP community or pain, because it's just part of what we do, right? It's the learning.
Yeah,
I'd definitely say this industry has a very heavy go-giver type of mentality to it. Whether it's in the peer groups or just like at the bar or wherever, it's definitely a go-giver community. I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that goes back to like me wanting to bring my friends in and like being sold on this. Like, you can build billion-dollar companies here. There's some in the space that people love and, maybe some not so much, but regardless, you can know everybody. And whether you're sitting next to an MSP or you're sitting next to the CEO of Datto or whatever it is, like it's just such a fun space. And at the same time, you get to wake up in the morning and truly believe that you're helping save the world. Like MSPs are so freaking important. We all know that.
Yeah.
And like, I get to be a part of that every day as a sales guy. Like that is just so fun.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And I love that spirit, Bob. I'm a big fan of, what we're really trying to do is teach a person to fish out here, right? We all have our specific knowledge. Rob, Tim, and I were all from that space, and you try to take that little part that you did best at and go, okay, how can I share that with others? And how can they tell me how I'm wrong so I can get better? And that's really the common thread I think I've seen, no pun intended, that I've seen for this industry, right?
For sure. Yeah. And I love that you guys like come from the space. I think that's one of the other super cool things is like almost everyone who's successful in the space came from an MSP. I didn't, so we'll see how that lands and turns out. But it means that like I again get to learn from people who like really know what they're doing. And I can, kind of talk the talk now because I've gotten to rub shoulders with so many people who have been in an MSP. I'm not sitting next to a ton of people that don't know, what the customer is like really doing.
Yeah, there are a lot of vendors in the space that came specifically from the MSP world, right? It's one of those things where you don't, and kind of like what you said, yes, I think you made an okay name for yourself, just throwing that out there. But I mean, you don't have to start out in the MSP community, but it makes the transition much easier when you're going to the vendor space for sure.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah,
so
I had a few thoughts there, but go ahead, Brian. I think you were transition to something.
Please
cool.
bring it on. Bring it on. If you got a couple thoughts, please share them. Because
I think like on the vendor side, there's a lot of positives of people coming from MSPs, but there's also some challenges, right? It means like you're not getting that diversity of background, and you're not getting like new knowledge and different type of expertise. Like, I have an undergrad in entrepreneurship and it's an undergrad, but there's some things that I learned there that I've been able to share at the bar too. And, on the vendor side, I'm sure you guys see this, like every time we're hiring someone, we're deciding, should this role be someone from inside the space? Should this be someone who came from an MSP? Or maybe like we want to look for a marketing person that's not new to the space and maybe has some enterprise experience and has like gone through some trainings that people typically don't get to go through when they're in this space, because the money is just bigger when you're in enterprise and some of those knowledge things. And so I don't know the answer. It's a hard trade-off because it takes longer, right, when you're getting someone from outside the space. But ultimately, I think it can benefit everybody when all of a sudden there's a new person at the bar who used to work at Oracle or something like that.
So I kind of went the other way around on that. I was in the MSP space for 16 years, and when I left, there was a little of a time that there was some non-compete in that role. So I took a senior leadership position in a Fortune 6 organization and got to see a whole other realm. But there were parts of that realm, especially when it came to executive communication, that I'm like, if I didn't see that, that wouldn't be part of the product that I'm now sharing with the MSPs and trying to help them with. So I'm a big believer of you got to get a mix of different personality types, different roles within your organization. Rob, you're huge on culture, being a part of it. And you're right. If you've got everybody that's MSP, we tend to sometimes get in that myopic viewpoint of this is what you need to do and how to do it. Yep. But, I know that one of my biggest growth things was leaving the industry for a little while. And it also made me yearn to come back.
That's awesome. So cool.
So that being said, let's kind of transition a little bit into what you're doing today over there at Thread. Why don't you give us kind of the backstory on what Thread can do for MSPs?
Sure. Yeah. Same conversation of like people coming from the space. When I was kind of looking for my next thing, I wanted to join a company that was, going to make a big impact, doing really cool stuff with great people. Matt and Mark, our founders, were at a very large MSP RFA for 10 years together. They built our original product, which was Chat Genie, kind of as a side mission, because they had all this conversation happening in Slack that wasn't getting back into ConnectWise. And so, a lot of MSPs are running into that today. They started addressing this 4 or 5 years ago. And so they built basically a tool that takes that conversation and gets it on the ticket. Now that's a feature for us. But it really got into this like connecting collaboration tools and giving people the ability to work where they want to work, how they want to work, and then getting that back into how our industry works, right? If you come into the space and it's like, hey, we're going to help you provide an awesome customer experience and it's going to be super easy to talk, but you have to get rid of your PSA. Like that's not going to go very well, right?
Yeah, that's not going far.
If you say that, like no one's going to be like, oh, cool, let me just like redo all of the process and like anything I've ever done with my business. And so, I think that's why there's sometimes a lag in technology getting to the MSP space, right? Like you look at enterprise and it's like, man, I wish I had something like that worked in our space. And so in some ways, like we're doing that for MSPs around communication. Like we're allowing the MSP to talk with the end user inside Teams or Slack or their website or whatever it is, mainly Teams and Slack, but we're doing that in a way that follows the MSP process, whether they're scheduling tickets, with their time entries, putting those in the PSA. Our whole thing's death to the ticket. We think tickets are a terrible way to treat people. They're not meant for communication. But at the end of the day, you still have to be able to bill. You still have to be able to follow your process. So don't tell anybody. Tickets still exist when you use Thread. You just don't have to think about them as much.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Tickets, man. Oof.
Everybody shudders a little bit when it comes to tickets, right? God forbid.
We ask people all the time, like, do you like tickets? And people are like scared to say no. They're like, my life like revolves around tickets. Like I can't admit that I don't like them. But a lot of people are pretty willing to, but it's just kind of funny.
Yeah, on both sides of the ticket, right? Like nobody likes the ticket, but that's where the hub is of all the information and how you get billed, how you handle everything. But oof, the tickets, man. You wake up in the middle of the night, those damn tickets.
Well, I think, we were talking a little bit before about just the AI side. We've talked about AI on here a couple times, but specifically just recently over the last 30 days, I've had multiple clients I've talked to. They're trying to streamline their time entry with AI, and kind of dovetails into what we were talking a little bit about. Can you take us through some of the next iterations that you all are going through?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. It's and it's been really cool. So about a year ago now, we had a weekend hackathon to try to start using OpenAI. It had just kind of started to get on the market. People were starting to talk about it, and we came up with a first version of our automated time entry tool. Ultimately, we call our AI service Copilot. We came up with it before Microsoft, after GitHub. So, I don't know where the copyright stuff really landed there. We
Somebody
work
will
really
figure it
closely
out.
with Microsoft. Yeah, we work together, so it's fine. But yeah, we started doing that like a year ago, and it was hilarious because we went to DattoCon and IT Nation in 2022, and we're showing this off a little bit, and people would just like look at it confused, because basically you click a button and it summarizes the ticket and writes a time entry in the PSA, and people would like look at it and then just kind of walk away, like they couldn't comprehend what was happening. Then fast forward to now, we show them that, and they're like, why doesn't it work this way? Like, it should be doing those things, right?
Yeah.
It's like so quickly, like everyone understands how it works. They already are like thinking of other ways it should be happening, which is awesome. It's just, well, I mean, everyone's talking about this, but it's just so crazy how quickly it's come on the market and how quickly everyone's evolving. So yeah, automated time entries were our first big thing. Then we got into automatically prioritizing tickets. So the ticket would come in, we'd set the priority in the PSA. Starting to see a few other vendors do those types of things. Automated dispatch is one big direction that we're moving towards, where you can look at categories, skill set, availability, assign those tickets.
Well,
But
go into that a little bit
yeah.
more. So what do you mean there? That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And, I think there's going to be a lot of different ways of doing automated dispatch. Like, you're seeing some other vendors start to play with like automatically setting priority.
Yeah.
For us, big picture, because we have conversational data sets and it's not just email data,
Right.
the AI is a lot more powerful because it can process things faster. It's richer. It can understand more. And because it's in platform and we're already having that communication, and it's where the techs are working, then having it tell them what ticket to work next makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of AI tools that we're seeing are an AI tool in and of itself. And so it just makes it harder, right? It's like, okay, I have to put this in another tool that I'm already working with. And so, sorry, long-winded answer, Rob, but getting it in our conversational tool that we're already using, we call it Inbox, having a Copilot along there with you is really powerful. As far as the dispatch goes, ideally and we're working on this now, we're doing priority categorization already, but ideally it's saying like, hey, Phil is really good at password resets or server issues.
Sure.
Maybe we want Phil to learn something about this. So like, while it may take him 20 minutes longer, we've identified Phil should take 2 tickets like this a week. So it's going to automatically assign those. Like, the possibilities are endless. We're not doing that today, but that's some things that we're working on.
That's pretty crazy.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
I think everyone is realizing that OpenAI is the tool, right? Like, we're not the ones doing this ourselves, but what we are doing is getting the prompt management on top of it, using the right type of triggers in OpenAI, making it work in a way where you don't have to go summarize everything and do it all yourself. So, it's that in-between gap. And then the fidelity of the data, if you talk to Crush Bank or some of those guys, they're huge on making sure you have high fidelity data. And again, I think that the chat conversation just makes it that much more powerful.
Okay.
Very cool.
Tim, you mentioned you guys had talked about it some. Like, what are you thinking about as far as like AI and tickets and all that goes?
Well, we're more on the sales side, right? So we've been using it more on the sales side, creating emails, just helping people with scripts and things like that. I know specifically, I've talked to a few of our clients over the last couple of weeks that they are actively trying to figure out how to incorporate AI into their ticketing system to just increase the utilization rate, right?
For sure.
Less time entries, less manual work for the techs and the engineers.
Yeah, I love that. I think the big thing that we're seeing people try to do, like, Halo PSA, put ChatGPT in their tool like right away, and you can ask it to help you with a ticket. There's no real prompting. It's just like trying, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
We love Halo. I think what a lot of people are trying to figure out how to do is to get the AI to read your tickets and read your documentation and be smart and suggest things and potentially interact with the customer. Like, I think the next year, 2 years, who knows what we'll see at IT Nation. But like people releasing things like that, we're certainly working on that. We have some really cool beta versions where you can say, hey, suggest a response for me, or tell me what I should probably do. Probably suggest, those are big words, right? Because we don't want AI just like doing stuff on its own yet. So like, 6 months from now, we plan to have Service Copilot in our tool, writing your time entries, dispatching your tickets, and telling you how to fix a ticket.
That's awesome.
That's brilliant.
Cool.
And that's it. I mean, the applications are endless, right? You've talked about it from a sales perspective, Rob and Tim. You're talking about it from a ticket perspective. We're doing the investigation on how you can do that to aid with assessments by learning the answers that have been given globally and offering those suggestions, so not as much manual entry has to happen there. Pick your poison. If you can think it and there's a prompt that goes with it, you can probably find a way to solve it. Just keep thinking.
Yeah, a lot of opportunity. Again, I think these end of the year shows, I think, right now, I think people are hitching their carts to horses and saying like, this AI vendor looks cool. Ultimately, a lot of people are waiting. We're going to see like who's doing what and how it works. But I'm really excited for DattoCon and IT Nation to see what people start talking about they're going to do.
Bobby, I bet you for the first time in years, there will be more AI companies than cybersecurity ideas out there. Hands down.
That's a good point.
I'll buy you a beer at the bar if I'm wrong. But I bet you the vendors that have AI front and center are going to be more than the vendors that have cybersecurity front and center.
But I'd also say, go, buyer beware. What are they really doing? Because to your point, Bobby, a lot of folks are just putting the tool in there and going, hey, do with it what you will. And not really building something that's bringing that that value to the end user. So it's going to be interesting. And it's definitely going to be a space that's going to be fun to watch over the next couple of years.
Totally.
Now, I know we're getting near the end of our time, but I did want to throw one more quick topic out there. So, Bobby, you're not a big believer in CSAT, huh?
That's funny, Brian. Thanks. CSAT's important. Like everyone should be doing CSAT. Like you want to know what your customers think about you. I just have seen too many times where it's the beginning of a quarter, you're setting your rocks, and a team saying, hey, our CSAT's at 93, our goal is to get it to 96. And it's like, all right, are you going to give out gift cards? Like, are you going to ask people to give you more 5-star reviews? Like 93 is really good. Like what more do you want? Like you're doing pretty good already. Let's get into the meat and potatoes and maybe ask people what they don't like about you. Like, why would you cancel working with us? Why would you quit? Like, what do we suck at? Right? Like those are the things that you want to work on if we're being real about it. Then now, if your CSAT's at 20, then you should probably focus on CSAT, right? A lot of people have really high CSATs.
But I feel you're spot on with that conversation, because if I was the guy sitting in the room getting proposed, hey, I'm going to put my rock to gain 3 points, I'd be like, why? What's that? What's the why for that? What is that going to mean for us? And more importantly, who's the community you're getting it from? My biggest challenge with CSAT, and we talked a little bit about this pre-interview, was it's coming usually from the end user community. Great for getting in front of problems quickly, great for understanding how the pulse is down there. But that might not be how the stakeholders looking at you. I call it the curse of the great MSP. The more we automate, the more we do remotely, the less we're on site and less things break. And all of a sudden, that's when your bill gets called into question, because why are we paying these guys? We don't see them anymore. What are we doing? So, I look at CSAT as you almost need correlated scorecards, an executive CSAT and a down markets, in an end user CSAT. And evaluate that way. So I always like to see kindred spirits that are trying to blow holes in the CSAT, because it only does tell part of a story. And I'm with you in terms of getting those objections too. Candidly, about 6 months ago, we started a process where anytime a customer churns and wants to leave us, they have to do a 3-question survey, or to finish the cancellation. And it's more just to help us, because people are nice to me. I don't want you to be nice. Go in there and tell me. Tell me where either the baby's ugly, or tell me why you're leaving, so we know what we got to adapt and change. So, MSPs, think a little bit about that during your churn times too.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you guys all have different ways that you address that, like feedback and supporting, like you were saying, making sure that the high level stakeholders make sure they feel the value. Now, what I will say, we've seen some really fun early results working with SimpleSat and Crewwho and some of those companies, of when our partners are interacting with their customers inside Teams or Slack, and they send the CSAT follow-up through a Teams message. We've had partners see over a 40% increase in response rates. And so that's what like we're really excited about with Thread, to be working with, you know, all of you guys and vendors out there, is helping other tools get more utilization and be in context more often, because we're creating that path to be in context.
Oh, even there, you're creating a more enriched score even too, because now you're increasing the sample size, because that's another argument with CSAT. How big's your sample size? You know, if you've only got 35 ticket responses back and you're measuring off of that, it's usually not big enough. So if you're removing some of that friction to getting it done because it's more front and center, that's valuable and powerful. Cool. So with that being said, I mean, maybe you can share with people how they can get in touch with you and others at Thread, and you know, what the next steps should be for them if they have some interest.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, guys. Yeah. If you want to meet your customers where they live and chat in Teams and Slack and have it go in the PSA, go to getthread.com, GET thread.com. Find me on LinkedIn, Bobby Jacobs. Pretty accessible. So yeah, love to talk with you guys. Man, you guys are doing awesome work. You know, I didn't pay to be on here. That's awesome. Like, it's, you know, happy to pay. If you guys have something I can sponsor, let me know. But the work that you guys are doing, you know, you guys are great and fun to hang out.
Yeah, we never charge anybody. We always want to keep this open communication and get the message out there for people. And that's why I hope, you know, like people listen to us, is because they know that this is how we feel about, you know, the people that we're chatting with. So we appreciate that. And I think you guys, everybody should go and check out Bobby's LinkedIn picture. You're gonna have a nice little smile on your face when you look at his LinkedIn picture.
I noticed that before.
Okay,
Thanks,
well, fellas, I really appreciate it here today. For anybody that is looking to get a hold of Bobby, we will have his LinkedIn information on the card with us today in the podcast. This episode will also be up on mspbusinessschool.com and anywhere that you get your podcast. Bobby, you're going to be down at IT Nation, right?
Yep, we'll be at DattoCon, IT Nation. You know, find me at the bar.
Again, well, you'll find me at the bar.
We'll be there.
Trust me.
We will be there.
You'll find Rob at the bar at least one of the nights.
Yeah, the other nights I'll still be in bed, but you know, first night I'm there.
Love it.
All right, fellas, it was great chatting with you.
Yeah,
okay, thanks for joining us, Bobby.
See you guys.